Blessings, good evening. We have some Dhamma questions have come in today, so we'll endeavour to answer them. Dear Lumpur, thank you for your teachings. I wish to practice walking meditation after meals and hope to get your view on whether it is right practice to keep his or her eyes focused on the ground and mindfulness on the sensation of the feet contact while walking. Is it also appropriate to practice walking meditation while keeping your shoes on or even walking on a treadmill? Thank you. Well, this raises a good question about practicing mindfulness and developing insight in all postures. So many people new to meditation associate meditation with just the sitting posture, sort of the classic pose, the meditator sitting with eyes closed in full or half lotus maybe. But of course the Buddha taught the four foundations of mindfulness, beginning with mindfulness of the body, directed to the body, and beginning with being mindful and fully comprehending posture. To know what posture you're in at any one moment. And that includes minor sort of postures, as in changing, moving your body around. So walking meditation has been a particularly useful meditation technique that's been developed over the centuries since the time of the Buddha. Some people have become enlightened when walking meditation. So don't knock it if you're not into walking meditation. Some people aren't. I'd recommend at least exploring it, like we do on retreats. Usually we arrange for people to practice sitting and walking meditation, and then in the monastery, monastics will live say here and in many other monasteries, they live in a kuti where they have a walking path, and it's greatly encouraged for so many benefits. Like you say, after meals, it's a very good practice, because to sit meditation after a heavy meal, especially in a monastery where you might only eat one meal a day, your stomach is full, all the blood goes to your stomach as you try to digest your food. So for the next hour or two, it's quite tough to sit meditation. Not impossible, so many practitioners try it, and sometimes that's a way to guide your food intake, because if you practice sitting meditation after a meal, you know whether you've overeaten. That's one way you know, because you're struggling with sleepiness. Nevertheless, the Buddha praised walking meditation and pointed out that if you walk after a meal, it helps with digestion, helps with wakefulness, and of course, you eat your meal generally in the daytime. I know some people, lay people, might eat or snack at night, but generally you eat meals in the daytime. So it's quite possible you'll have things to do after your meal. So it's a time when you can walk around to do those things, whatever it may be. Work, travel, shopping, all kinds of activities involving walking. So not just formal walking meditation, but also just doing these activities during your day and practicing mindfulness as you walk is recommended as a way to develop some constant mindfulness. So sitting, walking, standing, because sometimes when you walk you stop, you stand, and of course lying down, well, even lying down to rest, or when you're ill or falling asleep or waking up, you practice mindfulness in the lying down posture as well. So one direction the Buddha gave for monks walking on alms round, which is something we do every day, even if only for a short time, in the monastery, walking to a kitchen, say, or going out of the monastery to houses and villages. The Buddha said, when you walk, have your eyes cast down. That's the guideline. So the direction was, have enough, cast your eyes down at a point, an imaginary point on the ground, maybe 2 meters away, the distance of a plough from you to the end of that plough, if you had a plough in front of you. So let's call it 2 meters, 6 foot for old school. Gives you an idea where to place your eyes. The very first time I practiced walking meditation in Wat Bawon in Bangkok, Thailand, I was looking at my feet as I walked. So my head was tilted right down, looking at my feet, and the monk came along and adjusted the position of my head and said, you won't be able to sustain that. Keep it up and just look ahead rather than looking at your feet, because that's an unnatural way to walk, looking at your feet. And surprisingly, the more you concentrate on looking at your feet, the more likely you are to fall over anyway or trip over. So a reasonable distance in front, call it 2 meters. That's a guideline. If there's things happening around you, sometimes you do have to look away from your walking path in case of danger or unexpected circumstances, or just to know what's going on when there's noise or some activity around you, perhaps. Especially in the forest, there may be birds or animals around. Sometimes it's other people. So it's not wrong to lift your eyes and survey the area around, but try and do that mindfully. Know the intention to look when you need to, and then re-establish your eyesight on the ground in front of you once you've had your look at whatever you needed to look at. And then you come and look at the ground. If there's no danger, no big problem, you just carry on. As opposed to someone who's maybe not so mindful, not so aware, and they're just looking around because they've lost their mindfulness, and they're just letting their eyes wander all around. So where should the focus of your mindfulness be? Well, that can vary, but generally we encourage you to begin learning walking meditation by placing attention on the feeling of the feet touching the ground. So in a warm country or an indoor situation, that can be barefoot or maybe with socks on. And that often people find that very helpful, to actually feel the ground with your skin. And you're focusing awareness on the feeling of your feet pressuring the ground, then the lifting, and then pressuring one after the other. I was taught to recite Buddho at the same time. Buddho from Buddha. So Buddho, right foot down, Buddho, left foot down. And Ajahn Chah used to say, well, you walk at a pace that suits you. So some people do like to walk very slowly. Some people walk faster, and some people do walk very fast. It's up to you, and you have to learn what works for you. But the aim is to maintain mindfulness, whatever speed you're walking at. So if you're walking slow, to be mindful. And some people mistakenly assume that walking very slowly means you must be more mindful because you're so slow. But actually, you might notice when you're walking slowly, the opportunity for thoughts to take your mindfulness away and your mind starts daydreaming, it can be quite easy for that to happen. So some monks will walk fast, back and forth quite fast, and for long periods of time. You might begin by walking for just half an hour or something, back and forth. But some monks develop it as a practice and develop states of samadhi as they walk, and they walk for a few hours at a time. So it's something to experiment with, whether you're using the recitation of Buddha or the pressure of the feet on the ground. You can see what works for you, but try to restrain your eyes so not to be looking around too much. If there's no danger, there's no need. You keep your eyes in front of you. As far as shoes go, well, as you practice more walking meditation, you find that you quite naturally will be developing mindfulness in the walking posture, even if you're outdoors and in a situation where you're wearing shoes. You don't just stop practicing mindfulness because you put your shoes on. You carry on your mindfulness, except for the conditions have changed, haven't they? When you're barefoot, one sensation. When you're wearing your shoes, you don't feel the immediate sensation of the ground on your skin, but you still feel the pressure of your weight of your body down on your feet, and you can be mindful of the lifting and pressing down of each footstep. So you can actually practice mindful walking or walking meditation when you're wearing shoes. So maybe you have health reasons you need to wear shoes, weather reasons, it's cold, it's wet. Or it may just be you're mindfully walking wearing your shoes. Say when you're working or going for a walk or moving around in the lay life, going to your place of work perhaps. Everything can become part of the meditation and an opportunity to develop mindfulness, whether you're wearing shoes or not, whether you're indoors or outdoors. And you can do it in a very natural way. So, some people are embarrassed with their walking meditation. They don't want people to see them walking with their hands together, eyes down, because it looks weird. Well, you can save that formal style for the monastery or retreat or when you're on your own. If you're in public, you can just walk. You can have your arms at your side or behind or wherever you want them, but you still develop mindfulness as you walk. And you might find you quite naturally go to practicing mindfulness of walking if you've done a lot previously. So when you're walking to your car or from your car to the workplace, or you're going shopping or walking with your family in the park or whatever, you can still practice mindfulness of walking. It's maybe that you're just not doing it in the formal way back and forth you might do on a retreat. So never underestimate the power of walking meditation. As I said, some people have got enlightened. Many people have attained samadhi while walking. And it's quite possible to make the mind very calm, concentrated, abandon the hindrances while walking. Many people find it helpful for dealing with sleepiness, restlessness, boredom. Go do walking meditation. Obviously it can help if you have a lot of body pain when you sit. Many people will learn Dhamma while they walk. So they'll learn to recite suttas, parittas, verses as they walk. Sometimes recite out loud, sometimes just quietly to themselves under their breath. And of course you can also develop insight as you're walking into the nature of the body, the three characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. In the physical form, contemplating the physical form, feelings, the mind, the states of mind, and Dhamma. One can contemplate as walking as well, and sometimes if you walk a lot of meditation, you may spend a lot of time just doing more samatha practice, reciting Buddha or focusing on your feet. But then other times when you're more calm, you're contemplating the three characteristics, contemplating craving, how craving is triggered, how it arises, how it ceases, how to let go of different attachments that you've noticed. And you can contemplate very well when walking as well. So there really is a lot of scope for developing walking meditation in life, as well as sitting meditation. Next question. Good evening, Ajahn. I have a question. When I feel I'm trying hard to help the head of my department at work by doing several tasks he asked me to do, but then he didn't really help me with the things I hoped for, then I feel it's unfair and annoyed and uncomfortable. What is the best way for me to perceive this whole thing, Ajahn? Let go. Perceive letting go of the annoyance, the unfairness, the attachment to what is fair, not fair, right and wrong. Let go of the feeling of uncomfortableness, awkwardness. Let it all go. These are just mental states and feelings and perceptions arising, passing away. They're nothing. I know when we're not very mindful, they become something, and we have emotions arise. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't he recognize what I've been doing? Why didn't he help me? It's not fair. Life is not fair, is it? There's no contract you sign when you're born that life is going to be fair and everyone's going to treat you properly and it's all going to go just to plan. It never does. So the quicker you adjust to that fact and start letting go, the happier you'll be. So in one sense, you can thank your supervisor for ignoring you or being unfair, making you feel uncomfortable, because you've got an opportunity to investigate the cravings and attachments that are stimulated in these very ordinary situations. When you're ignored, when they're ungrateful, unappreciative, they never say thank you, they never support you. I know it's hard work, so you need lots of patience, lots of metta, loving kindness for yourself, for others, compassion. But use it as an opportunity to learn about your own cravings and attachments, what we call the sense of self, ditthi and mana. Ditthi means attachment to views and beliefs, mana, the conceit, sense of I am. You know, with injustice, what's not fair, you'll see a lot of ditthi mana coming up. Even though on one level you could say it's true, if they treat you unfairly, you say that's unfair, and everyone would agree, depending on the situation. But there could be some unfairness, and it's true they've been unfair. But still, if you're getting angry, upset, attached, that's your suffering. That's still a defilement to be abandoned and let go of. This is something people who don't meditate or perhaps who don't study or hear the Buddhist teachings often don't appreciate, because in life we often feel we're justified in being angry and protesting and righting all the wrongs of the world. But if you start doing that, you'll soon realize you can't right every wrong. And actually, if you're righting wrongs with a lot of anger, you often make more wrongs or further wrongs out of the wrongs you're trying to right. Things can escalate, things get worse, you get worse, more stressed, other people get more stress, more suffering. So Buddhism doesn't teach us just to ignore all the wrongs of the world and the injustices, but the Buddha encouraged us to recognize that the real source of our suffering is internal, craving and attachment to our feelings, perceptions, thoughts, beliefs, views. And we can work on that, establishing more mindfulness, reflecting back on ourselves in those situations, or sometimes after the situation. If you've already lost your temper, maybe you didn't catch it in time. Okay, well later when you calm down, reflect on it and see how you can adjust your thinking to accept what's happened, to find a way to let go. In the moment, if someone's treating you unfairly or some situation seems unfair, be patient with it. As I said, life is unfair, and you'll never get everything absolutely to your liking, to your wanting. Things are not always exactly equal. You learn this in a monastery. You come into a monastery and there's a lot of things you have to learn quite quickly about letting go of ditthi and mana. Ajahn Chah used to say, ditthi and mana, the attachment to self-view and sense of self, conceit, is the number one obstacle for a new practitioner in the Dhamma, really, whether you're on a retreat, in a monastery. These are what come up. Comparing with others, competing with others, following your ideals, wanting things to be according to your likes, your ideals, and being dissatisfied with the way other people behave and the way things are. This is the first thing you learn. Oh, this is making me unhappy. But it's your own attachments. When we have a strong sense of self come up, what do? We tend to think the world is against us, and we say, oh, everybody's against me, my life is bad, it's a big conspiracy. So sometimes monks would have that view. There'd be at Ajahn Chah's monastery and they'd be gossiping with their friends, saying, oh, he's really against me, he's giving me such a hard time, and the world is against me, the monastery is against me, and they just create a whole image that Ajahn Chah and the monks and everybody was against them. But somebody who's a bit more calm and reflective might say, hold on, maybe you're just interpreting things that way, and it's not really a conspiracy, it's just your own mind projecting onto the place, the situation. So that famous, much quoted story of Ajahn Sumedho when he was a young monk, sweeping the leaves in a very grumpy mood, complaining, grumbling and mumbling to himself. And Ajahn Chah walked up and asked him, is Wat Pho Phong suffering? Is the monastery suffering? And then it sort of woke up Ajahn Sumedho, and he reflected later on that and thought, the suffering is not really the monastery, the place, the people, it's my own reactions, my own thinking is the suffering. So that's a very Buddhist approach. You come back to your own reactions, your own views and opinions. And this isn't to say there aren't things that are unfair, unjust in the world, but you may or may not be able to influence those or correct those, but you can influence your thinking and your mind very quickly. So it's the shortcut to the end of suffering, letting go. You can do that for yourself. Dear Ajahn, I have more questions. Could Ajahn kindly explain infinite space, the dimension of infinite consciousness, the dimension of nothingness, and the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception? It's from one end of the spectrum to the other, isn't it? From strong sense of self, feelings of injustice, anguish, annoyance, to the base of nothingness or neither perception or non-perception. So for those who are not familiar, these are descriptions of what we call the immaterial or formless jhanas. So we have in Buddhism mention of the four material jhanas, rupa jhanas, which, when you read up on the Noble Eightfold Path, the factor samma samadhi, made up of the four rupa jhanas or material jhanas. which are prerequisites for enlightenment, so things we have to develop. The stillness of the mind, states of samadhi based on letting go, refined, ever more refined states of letting go. Based on the fourth jhana, rupa jhana, form jhana, one could theoretically go on to develop the formless jhanas, immaterial jhanas. And already before the Buddha was around, people were doing that in India, particularly rishis, hermits, people in very secluded situations with great patience, great endurance, great effort, living very quietly and simply. They developed the formless jhanas. So we see the base of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness. So these are perceptions, very refined perceptions, based on ever refining one's meditation object and abandoning what went before. So you develop the base of infinite space, but you realize there's still something not perfect in that there's the consciousnness that knows the infinite space. So then, then I'll abandon infinite consciousness. I'm oversimplifying here, but just for the means of the conversation. So they're based on the fourth jhana, the fourth jhana is still based on this physical form. But it's enough for you to develop insight into the three characteristics that can help us to let go of basic defilements, self-view and lust and identity with the body, and lust for the body, and anguish based on the body, and ultimately letting go of the body. But as one develops fourth jhana, for some people with the time, the space, the energy, they can go on and develop these four more refined states, ever more refined, even to the point where one develops the perception of, or neither perception nor non-perception. So it's not quite one thing or the other, knowing, not knowing. It's a very, the subtlest kind of level of samadhi, where one is obviously still awake, mindful, fully mindful, but the object is just so refined. So they say it's like ever more refined kinds of cloth, like the base of infinite space, infinite consciousness. It's like comparing, the finest cotton with an even finer cotton or silk or something. Four immaterial jhanas are like four very refined kinds of cloth, ever more refined kinds of cloth. There's always something a little bit more refined that you can take as an object for the mind. But they're not yet nibbana. They can be used to develop nibbana, or the insight that will lead to nibbana, just as the rupa jhanas can. And for anyone intent on nibbana, one has to do that. So some of those practitioners that the Buddha met and encountered had attained some or all of these arupa jhanas in the time of the Buddha. They met him and they used the basis of those jhanas to reflect again on the three characteristics. You might summarize, the sense of self that forms an attachment to the jhana that they've developed, that the bliss, the refined state of knowledge or knowing of infinite consciousness, infinite space, nothingness, and so on. There can still be an attachment there. So coming out of those jhanas, those practitioners reflected, this is impermanent, this is not self, and it can attain nibbana. One danger that modern teachers and in the time of the Buddha is pointed out is that one danger is obviously those states, if one develops them, are very refined, satisfying states of mind, deep states of jhana, where one's let go of all attachment to the body. They're just very refined mental states. If one dies, one is reborn in a Brahma realm, a Rupa Brahma realm, and one lives in that realm for a long, long, long time. So the Buddha has come and gone, been and gone. So maybe after a long, long time, thousands, hundreds of thousands, billions of years, one is reborn as a human maybe there's no Buddha left. And of course, in a state of immaterial jhana, where one is completely let go of the body, one doesn't have ears, eyes, one's not seeing, hearing in that state. If one's reborn as a Brahma God, one can't hear the Dhamma. One can't practice the Dhamma until being born back as a human. So in the big picture of one wishing to attain Nibbana, the cessation of suffering, including cessation of rebirth, it may not be the most ideal thing to be reborn as an Arupa Brahma. So those monks who have attained Arupa jhanas, their teacher, if they're skilled and know what's going on, will be encouraging them not to enter Arupa jhana, but to reflect on more, you might say, more mundane things like the body, the attachment to the body, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, the basis for craving and attachment in the khandhas, the attachment to the 5 khandhas. Because there's a danger that they may become very attached to the bliss, the refined bliss of those Arupa jhanas. But they're not an ultimate obstacle to Nibbana. One can attain them if well practiced and reflect on them with the 3 characteristics. So in Thailand I met 1 or 2 monks who appeared to have had experience with the Arupa jhanas, but they're very rare, and their minds are very, very powerful, very, very strong. Mindfulness is very, very equanimous, detached people, and usually they have quite a lot of psychic ability that comes with that level of skill in entering samadhi and maintaining samadhi, much more than the average meditator. So of course all of this is fascinating to those who haven't attained jhana. They love to talk about it, listen to the stories of fantastic things that can be done with jhanas and the psychic powers. But maybe I'll leave that for another day, because that wasn't in the question. Next question. It seems like I have hit an impasse in my practice and I have no inspiration. It's like I go well for a period and then run out of steam and give up. It seems like 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Any advice? Well, Ajahn Chah's response to this kind of question tended to center around patience. In Thai the word is otton, patience, patience. Endurance, patience, keep going, don't give up. And patience means keeping a good attitude while you encounter the difficulties of training your mind, doing the practice. What feeds patience? I think one quality that feeds into patience is faith, confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, in teachers, sort of listening to the Dhamma, associating with fellow practitioners is always useful in this respect, for boosting our faith and reinforcing it and keeping us going at a time when we personally may be faltering. So faith, patience, sticking with it, not giving up. When you're giving up in your practice, don't make any rash decisions. Don't say, oh, that's it, I'm never going to meditate again, or I'm quitting Buddhism for good. Don't make rash decisions at that moment. Just be patient with the whole thing, how you feel, what's going on in your life. Sometimes it's obvious why you've lost faith. Maybe you have other kinds of suffering come up in your life, and it's so impinging on your life that you kind of feel Buddhism or the Buddhist practice you've done isn't helping you. It's quite common. So you have to go back to square one. Why do I practice? Re-establish the faith. Sometimes it's more just a patience thing. Say like when you're ill, there's a lot of painful feelings, it's hard to meditate, hard to do good, hard to even think a good thought when you're very ill, tired, worn out. So be very patient with that. And if you are careful, patient, observant, you may find that over time your mind comes back again, your faith and inspiration returns. But you have to be patient enough to see that through to the point where things change. And it can change because many, many other people have experienced that. So that's another help, isn't it? You know, reflect on the fact other people have been through just the same problems as I have. Some people have been through much worse. You know, there's always someone around who's got more suffering, more difficulties than you. The Buddha himself went through every kind of difficulty and obstacle, and he patiently stuck with it and came out the other side. So we can. Ajahn Chah went through many difficulties, so read the stories, the biographies of teachers, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen who have practiced in the time of the Buddha or in the modern era, and you get some inspiration. That will help. So there's always something you can do in these situations. Try not to take everything so personally. You know, we all got karma. Sometimes our mind is not peaceful. Sometimes we have physical ailments, injuries. Sometimes we have problems with other people, work, the world around us. These are all very normal. So try to be patient and just reflect on that. It's impermanent, it's not sure. One day you feel down, another day you feel up again. One day you're healthy, next day you feel ill, next day you feel healthy again. Attitudes can change, views and opinions change, your thoughts change, your feelings and emotions change. It's not sure. So don't take those thoughts that are very negative or very depressing, disappointing kind of thoughts too seriously, because they can change. They're not that real. Maybe reflect on them in that way. Oh, it's not sure. How long will this bad mood I'm in last? Until it fades and you come out the other side. Write a journal. How long did it last? Then read that journal again later. Oh yeah, I was really depressed that period in my life, and then I came out of it. You write it down and you can read your own words and realize, oh, everything is impermanent. These moods, these feelings, these reactions we have, they don't last. That's one angle you can use, the uncertainty, the changing nature of your moods. Next question. How do I deal with distressing news that makes me feel unsafe to leave my home? Well, that's a very topical one at the moment. There's a lot of distressing news in the world, in Australia and around the world as well. But again, I'm not sure it's anything new. Obviously, sometimes the news seems to hit us harder. There's more news about a certain incident, when there's some kind of crime or stabbing or disaster or something. It can seem to hit harder, but in the time of the Buddha there was lots of things happening, not very nice things happening in the world, and there are now, because that's the nature of the world we live in. It isn't perfectly safe, secure. The Buddha encouraged us to go inwards. Of course, on the outside we do try our best to make things safe and secure, and in some situations, maybe just don't go out of your house sometimes if you feel there's some danger out there. Stay indoors more. That's why we have houses. But the real refuge is in our heart, isn't it? We say the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha are our safe, secure refuge. And that's open to everybody. So Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, it may reduce down to just reciting the word Buddho is like a refuge, isn't it? Because when you recite the word Buddho, you're not giving into the mental proliferation of fear, anxiety. So you can recite Buddho every time you remember something that makes you worried, hear some bad news, remember something bad that has happened, Buddha, 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 to calm you down, bring the mindfulness to help help you let go of the anxiety. Whether you're indoors or out in a situation that's maybe confronting, you can recite Buddha to keep you calm, mindful. And the more calm and mindful you are in a situation, the better your thinking is, the more positive and useful your thinking is, so you can maybe see what you need to do in a situation. Anytime you're panicking, afraid, anxious, recite Buddha, or similarly you can use the breathing. Breathe in, breathe out, and you go to the breath. It's very calming and helps you to deal with unpredictable, changing situations that come up in life. So practicing meditation, and of course you do that when you're not feeling threatened, and when you're feeling safe you can also do it, of course. So then you're ready for the time when there is more bad news or you feel more anxious. You practice at those times when you're feeling good as well. And just keep up a regular practice and you'll find you have a refuge. You start developing a refuge. Listening to the Dhamma, practicing mindfulness, reflecting on the Dhamma, you'll find that's your real refuge in an uncertain world, because the world is an uncertain place. Last question. Oh, 2 last questions. Ajahn, how to deal with boredom in the monastic life? Look for the enjoyment in the monastic life. Today in the monastery we had a change of activity. Often the monastic routine is very same. You have meditation, chanting, the meal, some chores, sometimes some study or teaching. You have a lot of repetitive activities. Some are group activities, some are just the activities of your own personal day in a monastery. A lot of repetition. So sometimes we do things out of the blue, so we go for a walk, or today we poured concrete, which can be quite enjoyable because you get something good at the end. You get a new concrete floor. Nobody is a professional concreter here, but you can have some fun learning a new skill, doing something useful for the community. So the practice of dana can be often quite enjoyable, meaning service, helping people, doing useful things, learning useful skills, new things. So partly it's practical, there's a practical side to it, just finding things that help to uplift you and bring you some enjoyment. So most people find helping other people or serving the community can bring that can help. Sometimes partly it's an attitude thing, developing some happiness, reflecting in a way that will bring you a sense of contentment and happiness with what you're doing. So the Buddha said if your samadhi is falling apart, he didn't use those words, I know, but you know what I mean. If your samadhi is falling apart, reflect on your sila. Did you murder anyone today? No. Tick that box. Did you steal anything today? No. Tick that box. Did you run off with somebody's husband or wife today? No. Tick that box. Did you tell a lie today? No. Tick that box. Did you get drunk or take drugs and get intoxicated today? No. Tick that box. That's 5 boxes you can tick. It's called silanusati. You reflect on your sila, living a harmless, good life, helping others, reflect on dana, cultivate brahmaviharas, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. I've been in situations in the forest, kind of every day the same, on your own, on retreat, no one to talk to, nothing happening, bored, so you start feeding the ants, rescuing an ant from a puddle. Okay, if that's all you got to do, we'll do that, that's something good. Or, probably more fruitful, walk up and down on your walking meditation path until the very feeling of boredom subsides, and you say, oh, it was just a feeling, just a thought, just an emotion. We've had a life of sensual indulgence prior to being in a monastery. So when you're in the monastery, you're always coming back to this point, oh, what do I do now? What's going to entertain me now? Or you start thinking of past experiences or seeking new experiences. Reflect on the very craving that's feeding that feeds boredom, restlessness, desire. And see, it's just boredom, it's just a desire, it's just a mental state, it's just a feeling. Is there anything real in that? Really investigate it until you see, oh, it's just another phenomena arising, passing away. I've been bored before, I may be bored again, but it's just that much. It arises, passes away. And the more mindful you become, the more quickly it will pass. Just take it as another object for contemplation. Last question. I have been at the same monastery for 5.5 years. Is it okay to ask to go somewhere else, or is this following craving? You have to ask yourself, is it coming from craving or wisdom? One or the other. I've been at this monastery 23 years. Perhaps I should ask to have a change. Before that, I was in Wat Mapjan with Luang Por Anand for almost 10 years. Before that, I was with Ajahn Chah, either at Wat Nanachat or at Wat Bapong. I did a little bit more movement in my early years. But I've been here 23 years, so 5.5 years, that's nothing. Just keep going. Sure, sometimes in our monastic life we can move around and it can be useful. Sometimes for short periods, a few weeks, few months, sometimes for a year or two. Especially nowadays there are more options in the Buddhist world for monastics, monks and nuns. You can go interstate or to another country, and that can, if done with wisdom, can be a good move to widen your experience, receive new teachings, experiences in different places. It can be helpful, but not always. One thing that is important is to know why you're moving if you want to move. So you aren't just going on impulse, on craving, because we do that a lot. I'm bored here, or I'm angry with someone, I want to leave. You see that in the world all the time. People are always moving, changing jobs, changing partners, changing this, changing that, because of various kinds of suffering that they've created. And they never see the real root cause, they never go beyond that, so they just move and move and move all the time, just like the dog with mange that keeps moving from place to place because he doesn't realize the mange is going with him, and the itch and the annoying itch is going with him. He always blames the place. That's craving. It's like that, isn't it? So Ajahn Chah is famous for monks who would go to him and say, I want to move, I want to go out on Tudong, wandering in the forest, or go here, go there. He'd often ignore that request. So then monks would learn not to ask directly, because if you ask directly, you're most likely not to get a good outcome. Or you'll be sent somewhere totally that you don't want to go to. You want to go somewhere and then they send you somewhere else. Or you want to go and they don't let you go. Or occasionally monks like to stay and he would make them go. He was often playing around with people's craving to help them see it by frustrating a desire for them, using the monastic training, the teacher-student relationship. But sometimes we have to do it for ourselves as well. We have to know our mind, I'm just following craving here, and we have to learn to restrain that craving ourselves. Maybe no one else will do it for us. Ajahn Chah could do it, so we've had monks, various senior monks come here before, I think it was Luang Por Sopon, I can't remember, but he was saying, for many years he was asking Ajahn Chah, can I go on Tudong? Or maybe it was Luang Por Sawang, I forget now. anyway, saying, "Can I go on Tudong? Can I go? Can I go?" And Ajahn Chah was just ignoring him. And then when he was about 5 or 6 rains, he finally plucked up the courage again and said, "Can I go?" Ajahn Chah said, "Yeah, you can go this time." And he's like, over the moon, all this relief, like the pressure in the bottle had been building up and the cork is taken out, the pressure's gone, now he's allowed to go and leave the monastery. But then there was a final comment, "You can go, but you're not allowed to return for 5 years." So it's like, oh, I got what I want, but I'm not allowed to return for 5 years, because most people didn't want to leave Ajahn Chah for 5 years, maybe for half a year or a period of time, but 5 years is a long time. Maybe your teacher will be dead by the time you come back. So Ajahn Chah could really play with people's emotions and their desires, make them go when they didn't want to, make them stay when they didn't want to. So there's no one simple answer here, but try to know your mind and don't act on craving, but try to observe craving and let it go. If the causes and conditions are there and it's appropriate, maybe you can try another monastery. If you want to try teaching yourself patience, well, stick with it. As I said, I've been here 23 years, 23 vasas, 22 vasas, 23, this will be my 23rd vasa, I think. So, 5.5 years, you're just beginning. So that's the end of the Q&A session tonight.